Ooh, all
All
right.
right, good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Partida with Home in LA, and tonight we are on our third session of the First Time Homebuyer series, and we're going to have a special guest speaker tonight, Daniel Andrade. He's a realtor, and he's going to be talking to you guys a little bit in terms about like what the process is like, what it's like to be looking for a property. So I'll go ahead and pass it along to Miss Isabel Duran and then Daniel. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to hear about the new real estate agent program this year. And I have the best, what do you call him? He knows everything about real estate and finding a house and helping you. He's been very successful and I really trust him. So let me present Daniel Andrade.
All right. Well,
Take it away.
thank you very much. It is it's always fun to do these classes because you meet people, they're looking to buy homes. And it looks like we had a couple people on here. So I normally start by asking you to put in the chat, what city you're looking to buy a home in. That way, if I see a city and I know of some kind of program, I can get back to you on that. So, as a real estate agent, so I know you this is your third session. So you've heard a little bit about credit, you've heard a little bit about loans, you've heard about some of the different programs, and now it's the real estate agent. So we normally don't look this slick and we don't carry around briefcases anymore. So I know I used to have a briefcase back in the day, but yeah, briefcases and those big block cell phones, we don't do that anymore. Now real estate has definitely changed a lot. As a real estate agent, my job has always been, as a real estate agent, our job is to help you find a home, right? That's our job. A lot of real estate agents say, well, my job is to be a photographer and a gardener and a marriage counselor. But really, when we break it down, our job is to help you find a home. And we walk you through the whole process. So we work with you, we work with your lender, we take the numbers that your lender gives you, and we help find you a home. One of the things that you really should consider when you're working with a real estate agent, and this is really important even today, because I just had some bad news from one of my buyers. So I'll tell
Oh,
you a little bit about it. But it's really important to have a realtor that knows about the different programs that are going on. So I'll tell Isabel, the funny thing is you want to have a team and all of your team should be able to answer the same questions. So if your realtor has, if something comes up, you should be able to ask your realtor, hey, can you tell me a little bit about credit? Or can you tell me about this loan program? The same with your lender. You should be able to go to your lender and ask them questions about the home inspection or the home buying process. And the same with Isabel. You can go to Isabel and ask her the same questions, and your team should all be able to answer these questions. But the most important thing that I guess I'm most proud of is that we take care of your problems so that you don't have to worry about them. So problems always come up during a transaction. I always say there's going to be at least three major problems. And I'll tell you about the problem that we ran into in a little bit, but our job is like we've been through these problems before, so we're already thinking ahead of how we're going to deal with these problems. So that's what your realtor does. Let me see. Do I have another slide?
of course.
Okay. Okay, so when we're looking at homes, this is actually interesting, and like I said, I'm gonna pull Isabel in a little bit because I want Isabel's advice. So when you're out looking for a home, so people used to talk about foreclosures and REOs a lot and short sales, and neighborhood stabilization programs. So foreclosures have really gone away. Banks are not foreclosing as much as they used to. In I want to say maybe it was 20 years ago that we had that big
Recession.
foreclosure, the big recession, and there was a lot of foreclosures. That was maybe 20 years ago now. And during that time, the banks actually realized that they were losing a lot of money by going through foreclosures. So they were foreclosing on houses. They were foreclosing on like this house and the owner maybe owed like 300, 400,000 on this house right here. The bank would foreclose and then they would sell it at auction for 100,000. right? And they would sell it to somebody. And then what the bank realized is, hey, the values all came back up. So the bank really lost a lot of money for no reason. They could have just left the people in the house and then, had the people sell later on or something like that. So the banks now are doing a lot more modifications. So with this one, I am going to go to Isabel and ask, are you seeing foreclosures or is it mostly modifications?
I am getting phone calls from people who are having problems because they weren't working during the COVID times and they found work and then they lost jobs. But there's that California Mortgage Relief Program.
Is that still available?
Uh, I got an email last month saying that they're short or how can I cut it? They're low on funds.
Wow.
So it's like first time, first serve. But
Okay. But
last
they're
year
still
I
giving out
helped two
money.
people.
Yeah.
Last year I started doing it with one lady, and then at the end of the year I got another call and I helped them through that. So I've been through 4 applications with the mortgage assistance. But yeah, I got that email last month that they're low on funds. So
Okay.
um,
And really,
unfortunately,
those are the foreclosures.
mhm,
Like even the state doesn't want to see foreclosure. So the state's
no,
willing to say, hey, we'll make up that difference that you haven't paid.
yeah,
So even if you buy a home, a lot of times people think I'm going to buy a home, I'm going to put my money in, and then if I miss a payment, the bank's going to foreclose. So the banks really aren't doing any
mhm,
foreclosures right now. So you're not going to see any REOs. The neighborhood stabilization program, this is really interesting because my buyers, the ones I was telling you about, they actually wrote an offer and the sellers actually bought the house from NHS. So NHS is one of these neighborhood stabilization programs where they make loans to people. There's different programs that are available to first-time home buyers, low-income buyers. The only issue is the buyers bought the property back in, so the owners that live in it, they bought it back in like 2015, right? So it was, or maybe 13. So it was almost 10 years ago. The only problem is in the deed actually says that they can't sell it to anybody that's not low income for 15 years. So sometimes when you get into some of these programs, there are limitations, but those houses are available. So the house that my buyer is wanting to buy, it's a little bit difficult because it went through that neighborhood stabilization program. But some of the neighborhood stabilization programs that are still available, there's Habitat for Humanity. They usually fix houses and sell them. There's NHS has a couple of programs. Each county has one. So LA County has some programs, and then Riverside also has some programs. San Bernardino County has some programs. So these are some of the different programs that are available. But most of the times you're going to just find traditional sales. So it's where somebody owns a home, they're ready to either get something bigger or something smaller, and this would be an opportunity for you to buy the house. Um, and then as you grow, you can always move up into a bigger house, or you can grow into a smaller house. So those are your traditional sales. All right, let's look at the next slide.
okay,
Okay, so when we're out looking at homes, so normally I'd like to break it down into like a 5-step process. So step one, this is really important, and you can write this down. Step one is you need to talk with the lender, and there's 2 questions that you have to ask your lender. The first question, it's really important, is how much is my payment going to be? Right? Because the lender can give you different payments depending on how big your loan is. So the lender is going to give you a number that based on your income, they're going to say, comfortably, you can pay this amount. Now you may decide, you know what, I really don't like that amount. I want a lower amount. So the lender would say, okay, well, then you have to buy something cheaper, right? So they'll put their numbers into their calculator and figure out a payment that's comfortable for you. Okay, so it's really important for you to talk with your lender, see what's the most they can approve you for, but also look at the payment and figure out a payment that's comfortable for you, right? Because the worst thing is when you come to me and you say, hey, Daniel, I'm approved. I got approved for 800,000. And we go out, we find a home. It's the home of your dreams. It's perfect. but then you go back to the lender and the lender tells you what the payment is, and then you realize, you know what, maybe I don't like that house as much as I thought when I first saw it. Maybe I want something a little bit smaller. Okay, so that's why it's important for you to start with the lender and ask them, one, how much is my payment going to be? And the other question is, how much money do I need to get into the house? So there's closing costs and there's down payment. If they're giving you some kind of program or some kind of assistance, then that amount will be lower. But it's important for you to know how much money you need in order to get into the house. And you also got to look at your bank account and see how much money are you going to have left, right? Because one is to buy the house, your down payment, your closing costs. But once you move in, depending on what the house looks like, you may want to do repairs, right? So the same thing, the buyers that we're working with, we had a contractor go look at the property today and give us a quote for how much it would cost to put in new floors because the floors were a little bit old. So we said, you know what, when the buyer moves in, they're going to want to put in new floors, right? So we have to figure out how much extra money you're going to need for any repairs that you want to do. If you're going to paint the house, also furniture, right? You may decide, you know what, it's a new house, I want to have new furniture, right? So you have to figure out exactly how much money you're going to have left to cover some of those expenses. All right. So we're out. We're right. So once you get the numbers from the bank, we'll go out shopping. And normally we'll go look at some homes. Right now, we're actually getting offers accepted really easily. So it's easier to get an offer accepted than it was now. It was like 2 or 3 years ago. So some of you remember when during COVID, there was all these bidding wars and people were running the prices up. That has really gone away, and it's actually easier for you to find a home and get an offer accepted. So sometimes we may go look at a number of homes. I say, we'll look at 6 to 8 homes. So the first time we'll go out, we'll look at maybe 4 or 5 homes just to get an idea of what the neighborhoods look like. So I'll ask you, what area do you want to look in? How many bedrooms do you want? Things like that. Yeah, so we'll go out, we'll look at some homes, and then we will write offers. Or you may decide, you know what, maybe I don't necessarily like this neighborhood. Maybe I want a little bit bigger house and I'm willing to look in a neighborhood a little further away. Right? So that's why we go out and look at homes. The thing about when we go out and look at homes, and I know you're going to forget this, but I'm going to say it over and over again. Usually the first homes we look at are going to be the best homes available. Okay, because I know you're going to say, well, I don't know if this home is the right color, or I don't like the way this window looked, or I don't like the way the kitchen looked. Usually the first homes are going to be the best ones we look at. After a while, we're going to be looking at homes that were maybe like your second or third choice. I have some buyers that they will look at every single home that's on the market, and by the time we're done, they don't care if the house has a door, they don't care if it has a ceiling, they just want to buy a house and move in. So like I'm saying, the first couple of houses that we look at are usually going to be your best houses. Also, if you're shopping for too long, home prices are still going up. So you may start looking at homes right now, like this little home that's on the slide. We may find that home for 600,000 now, but at the end of the summer, it's going to be 650. Right? So definitely, look at the house, think, this is a good house. And we'll talk about pricing, I think, in the next slide. Let me see.
Okay.
Yes, so we're going to talk about pricing. Oh, I kind of missed these. So we used to do the classes at the library, and we would have all these little houses, and we'd put them up, and we'd compare them. But the picture kind of shows what we would put out. So let's say there was 3 houses. This is 5 houses in the neighborhood. So when we're out looking at homes, sometimes, and it's kind of like Goldilocks and the 3 bears, sometimes a seller will price the house really high because they're willing to, because they think that the buyers are going to come in and offer a lower price. So some sellers are going to say, you know what, I want to price my house really high, and then I'll negotiate down from there. Sometimes the seller may list their price really low. And I know that this is a little bit more typical where we will list the price really low in order to get a lot of offers. So it's almost like an auction where we start the auction at a really low price, knowing that multiple buyers are going to come in and bid the price up. When we look at homes, I'm going to look at, like, for instance, these 5 homes. I'm going to look at the one that recently sold in the neighborhood. So if there's something just a couple blocks away that's the same number of bedrooms, the same size, the same condition as the house, I'll tell you, hey, looking at these properties, the one over there sold for 600,000. So I think that the neighborhood and the other one over there sold for 650. The one over here sold for a little bit less, a little more. But I'll give you an idea of what I think a house is really going to be worth. And when I give you that number, it's a number that I think the bank is going to be comfortable valuing the property at. So if we see that a house is priced too low, I'll tell you, you know what? I think the house is probably worth 20,000 more than what they're asking. So I can go back to the listing agent and say, hey, my buyers are interested. Do you think you're going to accept an offer at the asking price? And sometimes the listing agent will say, you know what, we have multiple offers and they're all over the asking price. So in that case, I'll say, you know what, I think we need to offer something a little bit higher if we really want to get this house. On the other side, if a seller lists a property and it's way too high, and after we look at a few homes, you're going to get an idea of how much homes are really worth. So once you know how much homes are really worth, then you'll say, oh, you know what, this house is too high. When a property is listed, if they list it too high, the one thing is they're not going to immediately drop the price. So they're not going to list it on Thursday and then drop the price on Saturday. Usually they're going to wait a couple of weeks. If they don't get any attention, if like buyers don't come out, then they would consider lowering the price. And they're not going to drop the price drastically. They're going to drop it slowly. So they may consider like a $10,000 reduction. Asking for a $20,000 reduction is really big. But sometimes, I see properties that are listed way too high. So that may not even be enough to make the property a fair, to get a fair price on the property. So I'll tell you, this one's way too high. And again, it would be a couple of months before the sellers really consider lowering the price. All right, let's look at the next slide. Okay, so once we go out, we're looking at properties. And you find a property that you really like. This house, you say, you know what, we found the house, we really like it. Oh, this is the one where, okay, this I already talked about the pricing. So let's look at the next slide.
I don't think there's another one.
Okay, so let's go back to that one. So we look at the property, right? We kind of figure out what we want to offer. We submit it, and then we see if the seller is going to accept it. So the seller may accept our offer as it is, or the seller may give us a counter offer with different terms. So they may say, you know what, I want a little bit more for my property. Or the other thing is there are reasons that you can cancel and get your deposit back. So something that I get asked a lot by buyers is they get nervous because your deposit is usually you're making a deposit of 5,000. Or if you really like a house, you may make a deposit of 10,000. So if you're putting these deposits down, buyers really get nervous because they think, hey, if I put my deposit down, am I going to lose it? So there's 3 reasons that you can cancel and get your deposit back. So within 17 days, so normally within 17 days, you can cancel based on the inspection. So, right, because we look at the property, we write an offer, but we're going to order a professional inspection. And the professional inspector will spend anywhere from an hour to 3 hours at the property, and they will check everything in the property. They'll go under the house. They'll climb on the roof. They'll check all the outlets. They check all the windows. They check all the plumbing, the electrical, the floors. They check everything in the house. And they give you this big report. It's usually like 100 pages long, and it tells you everything about the house. Now, they'll tell you the little things and they'll tell you the big things. So they may say, walk you through the house and say, the outlet cover is broken over here. You can go to Home Depot and get one for $1. And they may say in the bathroom, you have a leak in the shower, right? So that may actually be a major repair. They may say the air conditioner looks like it's really old, so we don't know how much longer it's going to last. right? That would be a really big repair. Or they may find an issue with the foundation, or an issue with the plumbing, or an issue with the roof. If the inspector finds these issues, we can go back to the seller and say, hey, there's all these issues. We either want you to fix it, or we want you to give us the money so we can fix it after we buy the house. And if the seller knows somebody that can do the repairs, then the seller will get somebody to do the repairs, or the listing agent may have somebody to do the repairs, or if the seller is in a hurry to sell it because they want to move, the seller may say, you know what, I'll give you a credit and you can do the repairs later on, which is what we were doing with the house today, where we sent a contractor to figure out how much is it really going to cost to put in a floor, right? That way we can ask the seller to give us the money, and then the buyers can fix it after they buy it. But if we don't come to an agreement, if the seller says, no, I don't want to fix anything and I don't want to give you any money, again, that would be one of the reasons you can cancel and get your deposit back. The other reason is the bank is going to send somebody, an appraiser, to look at the property. And the appraiser is going to tell you how much they think the property is worth, and they're going to tell you if the property is livable. So it's really important, because I know that sometimes you will ask, hey, can we get like a fixer-upper? Can we get something that maybe needs some work? I can buy it, move in. I have some cousins, some uncles, they do repairs. I'm going to have them come and put in, they do kitchens all the time. So you can't buy a house without a kitchen, right? Again, the bank wants a house that's going to be livable. So you have to have a kitchen, you have to have windows, you have to have doors, you have to have a roof, because again, the bank and the appraiser wants to make sure that you can live in the house as soon as you buy it. They don't want you to move into the house and not have a roof. So the appraiser is going to come out, they're going to tell you if there's anything wrong with the house that would be a reason that you can't live in the house, and they're going to make sure that the offer you wrote was fair. So the bank may say, oh, you know what, you wrote a good offer. I think it's worth what you offered. So go ahead and get the loan. The appraiser could also say, you know what, we think you offered way too much. I know that it was a bidding war, but I think you offered $20,000 over what the property is really worth. Right? So in that case, the bank is not going to lend you more than what the property is worth. So we would have to go back to the seller and say, hey, we're not able to buy the property because it just didn't come in at the appraised value. Would the seller consider dropping the price? Or, and this is where you have to look and see how much money you have in the bank, you may say, you know what, I really love the property. I think the appraiser was wrong. You may have some extra money in the bank that you would say, you know what, I'll pay $5,000 over the appraised value, or I'll pay $10,000 over the appraised value, right? So that's something that you would look at and consider. But if you can't come to an agreement, or if the bank said you paid too much and the seller doesn't want to drop the price, again, you could cancel, and at that point, you'd get your deposit back. The third reason you can cancel, and again, it's really important because it is your deposit. So you want to know, hey, how am I going to get my deposit back? The third reason would be the loan. So within the first 17 days, we are constantly talking to the lender, right? Because the lender has to give you the money so you can move into the house. You have 17 days to make sure that the lender is going to give you the loan. So normally when they do your pre-approval, they just do a really quick pre-approval, right? It's something where they just write down some numbers, they figure out what your income is, they'll check your credit score, and they'll say, based on your credit score and your income, we think you can afford a house for this price. Now, once we get an offer accepted, then the lender really goes into all the details. So the details, they're going to look at your credit report, and they're going to go line by line on the credit report to make sure that there's nothing that doesn't look right on the credit report. Make sure that everything is reported correctly on the credit report, that it doesn't have something like a small payment, but a huge balance on something, right? They would ask, like, what is that? The same with, the lender's going to check with your work. So they're going to call your work and say, hey, does this person really work here? And how much money do they make, right? They have to verify your employment. So again, it's usually 17 days for the lender to do all their work and then to make sure that they're going to give you your loan. If during that time the lender says, you know what, there's an issue with your credit, or there's an issue with something about we haven't been able to get a hold of your work, they haven't approved, or I've seen it sometimes where they'll look at your income, but you have a lot of overtime. or you have like other income where your work gives you mileage or something like that, then that could end up being an issue when they're finally trying to get you the loan, right? So if something like that comes up and the lender isn't sure that they can give you the loan, again, you can cancel, work on whatever issues there are, and then you'd get your deposit back, work on your credit or figure something out, and then we can find another property. But basically, those are the first 17 days. And I definitely wanted to let you know about your deposit, that when you do open escrow, you don't lose your deposit. So during those first, and now we're closing loans, we're moving people into homes between, getting your loan approved. It's usually like a month or two to find a home and get an offer accepted. And then once you get an offer accepted, it could be as short as 20, 25 days for the loan to close and for you to get your keys. So it does go really quick once we get an offer accepted. Once it does get accepted, there's a couple things that happen, and there's a couple of new people that get involved. So one person that gets involved that's important is escrow. So your escrow is going to get involved, and basically your escrow is a third-party bank. And what they do is they take your purchase agreement and they take your deposit, and they hold the deposit. They also work with the bank and they get money from the bank. Right. So when the bank is ready to make the loan to you, they will get the money that comes in from the bank. Escrow is also the one that pays off the seller's loan. So if the seller had a loan, escrow would do that. So escrow handles all the money, and they work as a neutral third party, right? So if you give your deposit to escrow and you cancel, escrow will actually give you your deposit back, right? As opposed to if you gave your deposit to the seller is like, no, I'm going to keep it. I already spent it. Right. So that's why it's important to work with an escrow company. Some of the other things that happen is, and this one's important, is you get a lot of reports from the seller. So the seller is going to give you like a neighborhood report to tell you everything about that's going on in the neighborhood. Some of the things that will show up on that report is, let's say you buy a house and you didn't realize it, but there's train tracks like half a block away. Right. So maybe driving up to the house, we didn't see the train tracks, but on the report, it's going to tell you if there's train tracks, if there's a landing pad. You don't think about landing pads so much, but like for me here at my house, there's actually a landing pad about a block away. And it's actually the sheriff's station. So it's nice to be near the sheriff's station, but every once in a while, they have a helicopter that lands at the sheriff's station. Right. So once in a while, we'll hear a helicopter buzz over our house. And I can actually hear them right now. So that's one of the things that's important to look at that natural hazard report, because it'll tell you all the things that are around the property. If you're near an industrial zone, if you're near a fire zone, if you're near a flood zone. So all the things are going to come out in that report of the neighborhood. Also, the seller is going to give you a couple of different questionnaires. So the seller goes through this questionnaire, and the questionnaire asks things like, have you done any repairs lately? Is there anything wrong with the house? Right? Is there anything broken in the house? Do all the appliances work? Do people walk through the yard? Right? Like you want to know, hey, does somebody live like on the next property and they walk through my yard every day? Right? That would be something that you'd want to know from the seller. So it has all these different questionnaires about the property that the seller is going to let you know about. Maybe there's flooding on one side of the house. So the question is there, like, is there any flooding on any side of the property? So we go through all the questionnaires. We're going to get that from the seller. You also get a title report from the seller. And your title report is almost like the pink slip of your car. So you want to be sure that you get a title that's clean, right? Because you don't want somebody to come back later on and say, oh, you know what? This person, I replaced the roof on the property. They never paid me, but now you're the owner, so you have to pay me, right? So the title is actually insurance that nobody's going to come later on and try to charge you for something that the previous seller did, right? So it's basically insurance that the title is clean. So that's really important. And it's important to review the title report, because that's where I ran into the issue with that the property used to be restricted to NHS. So we're trying to figure out how to handle that. Other things that happen, escrow, but the most important thing that happens during, once we get the offer accepted, is the lender has to give you the money. So it's important to consider that anything that the lender sends you, you want to make sure that you get it back to them. So the lender is going to ask you for all kinds of details. They may ask you to write a letter explaining something that's on your credit report, or they may ask you to write a letter explaining something else. So whatever the lender asks you for, it's important to give it to them because they're the ones that are going to give you the money. In terms of doing the property inspection and all the paperwork that your realtor does, we can honestly have everything done like in a week, maybe 2 weeks. But our paperwork is not going to hold up the transaction. The only thing that's holding up the transaction is going to be your lender and making sure that the lender gets all the paperwork that they need. So once the lender is satisfied with everything, the lender's going to say, hey, you know what? We got all the paperwork we need. We're ready to send you the loan documents. Once you get loan documents, I want you to keep in mind that once the lender says we're going to give you your loan, you can't get a moving truck yet. You have to wait because once you get the loan documents and you sign them, the loan documents still have to go back to the bank because the bank has to make sure that you signed all the paperwork correctly. And then the bank sends the money over to escrow. Remember, escrow now has the money. It could be an extra day or two before the title gets changed and put into your name. So it could be something like the lender says, hey, we got everything done on a Monday. The rule is that if a lender approves your loan on a Monday, you have to wait 3 days before you can sign loan documents. So the lender is going to send you a document that shows what your closing costs are. You have 3 days to review those before you can sign loan documents. So if the lender says, hey, everything looks good on Monday, you're maybe signing documents on Thursday, right? So you can't get the moving truck until you get the keys, right? Because you're going to sign on Thursday. The documents are going to go back to the bank. You won't get the keys on Friday. Like you may not get the keys until Monday, the following Monday. So just keep that in mind that you have to wait for the keys before you get the moving truck, because I've had people get really excited. They go out, they get the moving truck, they bring it, they pack it, and then you don't get the keys on Friday. And you can't move until Monday, and you have the moving truck full of all your furniture. You're sleeping in the truck because your bed is in there, and it's just all bad. So make sure that you wait for the keys before you get the moving truck. But then you move in, and Isabel used to have a truck. So Isabel used to be able to help you move, but she doesn't help you move anymore. But you definitely, right now, the most important thing is, get pre-approved, get some friends with trucks. And the next slide I think is questions. But before I jump into questions, I just wanted to say, when you're buying a house, like I said, we're going to go out and look at a lot of homes. Usually the first couple of homes are going to be the best homes that you should buy. Don't wait for the perfect home, because I have a lot of people that's, they always find an issue with this home or an issue with that home. And they think, this home isn't perfect. I want a home that I'm going to live in forever. But think of this as your first home, right? So you're going to buy this home. I always tell the story of this couple, really sweet couple. I think she was working at like the 99-cent store. He was working for Herbalife, I think. And all they can afford was $200,000. And even when they were shopping, $200,000 was really low. So we ended up finding them a condo in Pomona, really cute 2-bedroom condo with this big yard for a condo. It had a really big yard. They lived in it for 3 years. They had 3 kids in a 2-bedroom. So the kids were growing and growing and growing. Eventually the kids were too big, so they ended up selling the condo and buying a house. When they sold their condo, they actually made $80,000. And they put those $80,000 towards a house. The kids were already going to school in Pomona, so they stayed in Pomona. But they were able to afford a 3-bedroom house with a yard. And, the kids, they were able to split the bedroom, but they were able to move up. So consider this your next home, but it's just one step in the process to getting your forever home. So I wanted to share that. And I just wanted to open it up and see if there were any questions.
So are there houses for sale now?
We do have a lot more homes for sale. Yes.
That's good. That's good.
So we do see a lot more homes. So Isabel, have you ever seen a deed restriction on an NHS property?
What is that?
So NHS actually puts a 15-year restriction on the property where the house has to be occupied by a moderate income family.
I saw that in Pasadena. I
Mhm.
forget the name of the organization in Pasadena, but they were like what you say, NHS. They got money from the city, from grants, and they would refurbish a block of houses that were left alone, and they would sell the house, but they would have a condition that if you were gonna, you live there and then 10 years later you want to sell the house, you have to sell it to someone that's low income also.
Yeah, so we're dealing with that one. But again, these are issues, like I said, these are things that we've dealt with before. And as realtors, we help figure out solutions.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
All right. So that was my question. Does anybody else have questions about the process? Come on.
I just
¿Cómo
have a
hacen
question
cuando
on
10 o
title.
15 personas quieren la misma propiedad? ¿Qué toman en cuenta?
Okay. Okay, so then there was one before that they asked about
Yeah.
they're open for cities offering first-time buyer programs. This is important. So we don't always know where the down payment assistance programs are. And some of the city programs are very limited. So we've seen it where a city may offer a down payment assistance program, but nobody qualifies just based on the income limits. My office is in Downey, and I know that Downey tries to offer like $30,000, $40,000 in down payment assistance, but the only people that would qualify that we figured out would be a couple that's seniors buying the senior condos for like 220. Just because the income limits were so low, like you would only qualify for a low amount. In terms of some of the programs that come up, different cities have programs. They usually start to announce it now, like April, May, June, and then the programs become available July 1st. So definitely keep an eye out for some of the different cities because a lot of their programs do start on July 1st, but there are limits on some of the programs. So I know that Carson used to have a down payment assistance program, and as soon as they open it July 1st, the requirements are that you live in the city or you work in the city. So you can't say, oh, I want to go move to Carson. Like you already have to be living there or working there in order to qualify for that program. And that program usually runs out of money like within a week because everybody in the city applies for the program, right? So some programs go really fast. So it'll open July 1st and then it'll be done by like July 10th. So keep that in mind. The question was, cuando hay 10 o 15 personas que quieren comprar la casa, so that kind of goes back to that question of what I was talking about on the pricing. So when the price is really low and the house is really nice, you're going to get a lot of people that want to buy the property. So some of the things that we've done to get the property, the most important thing, and I don't even know where the slide is at, it should be here. The most important thing you need is a friendly realtor. You need a realtor that smiles really well because your realtor is going to talk to the listing agent. And if your listing agent likes your realtor, then they're more likely to work with your offer. I know that we've sold properties where we've talked to buyer's agents, and the buyer's agents, like I remember specifically one property where we were selling the property for the owners, The buyers we really liked, the agent we did not. So we had to tell the owner, you know what, that agent is going to be really hard to work with. Like the buyer looks perfect, but the agent is just going to be a mess. So we ended up skipping over that buyer and going with another buyer that had a friendlier agent. So it's really important that you have an agent that is actually nice. So again, if you have a lot of offers, some of the things you can do is usually it's within 17 days that you can get your deposit back. You can say, you know what, I'll do my inspection in 5 days. The same with the appraisal. We're getting appraisals back in, I think the appraisal we just did, we got it back like in 5 days, 6 days. So you can say, you know what, instead of 17 days for my appraisal, I'll do my appraisal in 10 days and I'll do my inspection in 5 days. Because the seller wants to be sure that you're not going to come in on day 17 and say, hey, based on the inspection, we want to cancel. Right? So if you say, I'll actually confirm that I'm buying the house in a shorter amount of time, they would be more open to accepting your offer. Also putting down a bigger deposit. So normally we're putting down a deposit of $5,000. I know one of my agents, they love to write offers with deposits of like $500 or $1,000. And I always think it's crazy, but she gets the offers accepted. But normally the bigger your deposit, the more serious the seller is going to take your offer, right? So that would be the other way to do it. The other thing that some sellers, and every seller is different. So we would talk to the listing agent and say what's important to the seller. Some sellers actually want to stay in the property a few more days after it closes. So if you tell the seller, hey, I'll buy your property, I'll give you the price that you're asking, and I'll let you stay in the house for an extra week or two in order to move all your stuff out. Sometimes sellers will say, you know what, I like those people because they're being considerate and they'll give me more time. We used to write letters. We used to write letters and send them pictures of you guys. So if you guys had like kids and puppies and stuff like that, we would send, I remember for one property, the listing agent and the seller always call my buyer the cat lady because we submit the offer with a picture of her and her little cat. Right. So we used to do that. Now we can't do that anymore. So we can't send pictures of you because it could be discrimination, and we can't send letters with details about you because again, it could be considered discrimination, and you don't consider it like it could be something where like your marital status. So if it's a couple that's married and you accept their offer, then are you discriminating against people that are not married? Or do you accept somebody with kids and then you're discriminating against somebody that doesn't have kids? Right? So it's kind of weird that the discrimination, it works both ways. September, a good month to sell or buy. So there's a couple more. So Isabel, how long do I have?
We have
Another
until
hour?
6.
Just kidding.
We have 14 more minutes.
Okay, so let me go through because I got a couple more questions. So one is the county assistance program. So there's city programs and there's also county programs. So some of the county programs are easier to work with. Some of the programs, so every bank is a little bit different, and you have to talk with your lender to see what kind of programs they have. So some of them are for the whole county. So LA County will have a program that covers all the properties in LA County. Sometimes the banks drive me crazy because they use down payment assistance based on tracts. So what a tract is, it's kind of like a mini neighborhood. So a tract could be like all the houses on this side of the street, but none of the houses on the other side of the street. So we would actually have to look at a map, figure out which houses do qualify, which ones don't. So those get a little more difficult because you're trying to find a house. So it could be, you look at all the houses and you try to figure out which one is inside the map and which ones are outside the map. And sometimes you don't find properties that some of the bank programs qualify for, which is really difficult. So when we're talking with your lender, we do ask them, hey, are we using are we using tracts in order to qualify the house, or is it for anything in the county? So there are county programs. There's also the state programs. Right now, the big one that everybody is talking about is the Cal HFA program. So the Cal HFA program, that's the one where they're doing the lottery. And if you win the lottery, you get, I want to say like 120,000 or 150,000. The only thing is it is a lottery, so you do have to get approved for Cal HFA now. And then if you're picked as the lottery winner, then you would get the money and you'd have to buy a house within like a month or two. Okay. And it could be something where, at the end of the 2 months, if those people that didn't buy, that didn't take advantage of the money they got, they may do like a next lottery draw after that. Like I've seen that happen a couple of times where, they'll give everybody money at once, and then the people that didn't collect the money, they get a second chance for whatever money's left. But that would be for the whole state. So that was the Cal HFA program. In terms of, uh-huh,
That Cal Haffa, that's only one winner?
no, it's a lot of winners. So what happened was they did the program once and they ran out of money like in 2 weeks. Everybody took advantage of it. So now what they're doing is we're getting everybody approved. We're putting in your bid, like we're pretty much submitting your application into the program, saying you're approved for Cal HFA, and this is a down payment assistance program. And if you get the money, then you'll know that you're one of the winners. But it's definitely one of those that we could submit it now, and if you do win, then you would get that money. Cal HFA does have other programs where they're able to assist you with a down payment. The only thing is sometimes in some of the programs may or may not make sense, right? So there could be like there could be a bank program that gives you down payment assistance, but the interest rate's a lot higher. So it may not end up working for you, right? Because if your interest rate's a lot higher, then your payment's going to be a lot higher. So you kind of have to balance that. And you have to ask your lender, hey, what are some of the different options, and which one works for me? So here, let me see. So that was county. We went over so the best time to buy a house. I don't know. I think Christmas is the best time to buy a house. Because there's just less buyers out. Usually in the spring and the summer, a lot of sellers do come out and try to sell their homes because they want to move. A lot of times because they want to get their kids into a new school district, or they want their kids to start at a new school, right? So they don't want to move them halfway through the year. They wait until the summer. So we do see a lot more homes available between the spring and the summer. But it's usually, there's a lot more homes available, but there's also a lot more buyers out. So I usually think that it's easier to be out shopping when nobody's looking at homes because there's just less competition. But in terms of, the number of homes available, you're going to see a lot more homes in the spring and the summer. Helpful, cheesy, awesome. And there was an appraiser. Okay, so I like that question. So the appraiser does come in and give you a value of the property. So when they give you a value of the property, they're gonna let you know what it is. Sometimes some cities will actually have a city inspector go out and look at the property. So one of the cities that's really tough is Compton. Southgate is also tough. I think Linwood has a pre-sale. So some of the cities, before the property sells, they're going to have somebody go out and look at the property. And the city may call out issues with the property. So if the city, like for instance in Compton, they will go through the whole house and make sure that everything is installed with permits. So they're going to check the windows. I have had city inspectors in Compton literally tell me the house is 50 years old. The kitchen doesn't look that old. So the kitchen must have been updated. You didn't get permits, so now you have to get permits. And they will actually write up the kitchen just because it looks too new. So that's really tough. Some cities will also do like a drive-by inspection. So those inspections are the inspector won't get out of his car, he'll just drive by the property. I have some cities, I want to say Garden Grove or one of the ones down there, where when the inspector comes, you have to leave the garage door open because they want to make sure that it's still a garage and that the garage hasn't been converted. Right? So each city is a little bit different. When we do get an offer accepted, if you are concerned about some of the issues or what permits are available, you can either go to the city. You know, if it's a small city, it's nice because you can go to a small city. If it's a big city, so I'm thinking Los Angeles City, it's a little bit more difficult to go down to the city and get permits. But for LA City, you can actually get all your permits online. So the property that we're dealing with right now, the one the inspector and the contractor went to go look at, they actually, the buyer also wanted to see the building permits. So we pulled all the building permits and we saw that the roof had been replaced with a permit, the windows had been done with a permit. There was the kitchen was remodeled with a permit. So there was a lot of permits for things that were done in the property, but we did notice some things that were done without permits. Right. So that would be something we'd consider.
Wow.
Right. And then adding on, so yeah, so the city, yeah, again, for permits, we would look at the permit. So if it was a 2-story and more than that, so when you buy the property, we'll get a description of what the property is. So if the property says my property, for instance, so my property is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, little house. But the previous owners actually converted the garage into a room. So my office is the room in the garage. The previous owners also put on a bathroom without a permit. So even though the city says my property is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, where we live, it's a 3-bedroom and basically 2 bathrooms. So sometimes you'll have things that are not permitted. You as the buyer have to decide, you know, do I buy the property? And if the city calls me out, then I'm going to have to take care of it. We've lived here for 10 years and the city doesn't really bug us. But I know that if the city did come for something like, for instance, the roof, if I have to get the roof replaced, the city's going to come out and they're going to say, hey, what's this extra room hanging out off the side of the house? Or what's going on with the garage? Why does it have a window and a door? Right. So the city could go out and make you do things. But it's usually something where the city will notice. So there was a question about, you know, if it was a 1-story and somebody put a 2nd story without a permit, the city will notice that now it's a 2-story house. So in that case, the city would have gone out and told them, hey, you have to get a permit if you're going to put a 2nd story on the house. It's a little different if they added like in my house where the bathroom is off the back of the house in the yard, but a 2nd story, yeah, the city would catch that. All right.
Wow. I have a question.
Yes.
I'm looking for a welder.
Ooh, so there's this crazy neighborhood over by your bank. It's and I've actually been there and I lost where it's at, but I know some of the people over there. It's kind of this
I
welding,
know.
there's like a little
He
welding
told me when he
community.
got it at the game.
So on the welding community, there was actually an alley, and I went into this alley, and there was literally like 10 welders in this alley, all with different little shops. And it was just the weirdest thing I found. I
Wow.
will, and I think it was over by like your place, over by like Alameda, Main Street, down by Imperial. It was, yeah, it was the craziest thing. But I do have somebody that does welding, so I'll send you their info.
Yeah, you won't believe this. After 36 years with this house here, we finally got a notice taped on our door from the city of Los Angeles saying that people with apartments or, you know, like duplexes, the duplexes apartment, they're going to inspect it to see if there's any kind of things that would be dangerous.
Are you in LA City?
Yeah, I'm the city in Los Angeles. Yes.
Do you rent out the back?
Yeah.
Yeah, so then they would inspect it.
Yeah,
So you
so
can
then-
always say, you know, I live in the front, so I only rent out the back, so they would only check the
Oh,
back.
yes, so they came and they looked
Mhm.
at the fire alarms, you know, the things
Mhm.
you put in there was one that was not connected to the electricity. It was,
Mhm.
you know, battery. So I have to change that before May 5th. Otherwise I'll be, you know,
The electrical ones, yeah.
yeah. And then on the front, I have a wrought iron fence. And my neighbor says, you know, I'm really worried about that fence, that when the electricity goes out, we're not going to be able to open the fence with the control. So she found a welder in the streets that they were fixing the house, and she asked if they can come here and make the corner a door and put the things that to put what do you call those? Uh, Oh, yeah. My vocabulary is gone.
But I think
The lock,
there
to
should
put the
be,
locks in.
yeah, there should be like a little release on the motor.
But
If
it's,
the power goes out, there, like if you
yeah,
have a
it's
motor,
electrically
there should be
connected.
like a little release to roll it open.
Okay, yeah, there is, but we don't, you know, we would have to crank it all the time.
Mhm.
So anyway, she put the locks there and had the door open, so but he put the locks outside, not inside. So the inspector says, does everyone have a key? And of course, my mistake is no. Okay, well, you have to take
Yeah.
this all off. So I need a welder.
Yeah, and they usually look for safety issues is what they're
Yeah.
going to call out mostly. Because again,
Yes.
if there's a fire, they want to make sure that people are able to get out. The same with, you know, when the people convert garages, the city wants to make sure that there's a way for people to get out.
Right,
Mhm.
right. Uh-huh.
All right.
Okay, well, thank you. Alameda and,
Thank you.
I will send
Thank you
you
guys for
the
all the
neighborhood.
questions.
Yes.
okay,
Uh-huh.
All right. All right. Well, thank you again, Danny and Isabel. We do appreciate it. And thank you everybody who attended and was asking questions. It does make a huge difference. So thank you guys for asking all the questions. And we're all learning here. So thank you. All right. So I guess we'll catch you guys next Tuesday on the 23rd at 6 p.m. So that's going to be the final session, and we're going to be going over escrow and closing costs. So I'll see you guys next week.
okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All right. Thank you.
Lisa.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Daniel.
Thank you.
You.